In this update, we've got the coldest temperatures so far this season, diving into the Rocky Mountains this morning as snow is starting to fly across that region as a powerful low pressure center really starts to get its act together and really starting to wind up. And out ahead of it, within the warm sector, we've got numerous high wind watches and wind warnings in place, as well as some severe storms are going to be breaking out later on this afternoon across portions of Nebraska. And then further south, we had that disturbance that moved across the Gulf of Mexico that went inland into the southeast. And overnight, we did have some possible tornadoes reported within Florida. Mainly the Tampa Bay region into the Clearwater region. They do have a tornado watch already in place this morning. So here's the latest update as far as the snow goes for the Rocky Mountains. We do have, numerous winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. This is the most significant snow so far this season. So places like into Ogden, back into Salt Lake City, into Provo, Utah, those areas into Rivington, back into the, possibly reaching the Fort Collins region. I don't think it actually reaches Denver, but places like into Vail and to Aspen, you're going to be getting some heavier snows. But further north into Casper, those areas could get really pounded, 12 to 18 inches. And there's definitely some isolated pockets near portions of maybe Spearfish that could be picking up possibly 2 feet of snow, as heavier snows will be inundating this area over the next 24 to 48 hours. And further south, we do have that active tornado watch this morning for areas into the Sarasota region, into Tampa Bay, back into Orlando, into Palm Coast region, into Gainesville. This area's got to be on high alert because we've had some actual activity overnight and a possible tornadoes have been reported in Tampa Bay as well as into the Clearwater region. And in fact, they did have a newly updated mesoscale discussion. I'm recording this video pretty early in the morning. They could in fact extend this tornado watch possibly into the 1 o'clock time frame. So don't be surprised along this warm sector, still as training bands still impact that region. They could extend the tornado watch several more hours to go through the afternoon into the 1 o'clock time frame. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. And I would love to reach 225,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And you can help me get there by subscribing to the channel and following all my daily updates. So let's take a look at the setup this morning on the radar, what it potentially may look like about 9 o'clock. You can see the heavier snows starting to fly in a good part of Wyoming and down here into the western Colorado region. And then out ahead of it, where the low pressure is back into Wyoming, we've got some very heavy rain traversing across, and that will traverse it across into the Sioux Falls region. These areas are wind advisories and high wind warnings and watches. We're talking very high winds out ahead of this system. 50, 60, 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour might not be ruled out within this corridor as this low pressure continues to deepen this morning. And then further south, we've got to watch this boundary right along the warm front. And you still have these just training convective complexes within this sector. It's kind of like a tropical type system. We are getting some tropical spin ups within this region. In fact, they have extended that tornado watch through about the 1 o'clock time frame. So, and you can see the warm front on the temperatures. You got the cold air protruding into the mountain regions. Those areas drop into the 30s as heavy snow continues to blanket that region really all day long. And there's the warm front, and you can really tell where the warm front is. To the south of there, that's where the instability, and we're in the 90s out here in West Texas, folks. So you can see where the rain shaft is across the southeast, where the temperatures hold into the 60s into the afternoon. But we'll be watching this powerful storm system as it traverses across the middle of the country. We've got to be concerned about some severe storms out ahead of it. So this is the Elicity map. This is where we have the most possible significant updrafts within these supercell thunderstorms. It's right into the central and eastern portions of Nebraska. as we head into the afternoon, into the early evening time frame. And then we still have those tropical funnels. We have to be on high alert within the Florida region, especially into Central Florida, through the 1 o'clock time frame today. So here's the update, the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. They really haven't changed this really in the last couple of days. It's still been hinting at the same area here into North Platte, back into the Hastings region, into Omaha, and back into Topeka. It could reach as far south as the Wichita region, heading into Kansas City. But really the main bullseye, if you will, is back into central and eastern 2/3 of Nebraska. Definitely got to be on high alert, especially right after the 4 o'clock time frame, because some of those actually could turn tornadic as well. So they do have a little bit of an elevated risk, of 5% probability of some of those spin up tornadoes as we get that low pressure center continue to deepen and expand, and those isolated supercells out ahead as these bow echoes start to form. And you can see what the radar could potentially look like. About this is around 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. So we still have that heavy snow really inundating, as you will probably have some foot totals across this region by then, with the heavy snow continuing to fly and further south as well. So we'll have that changeover to snow across the Salt Lake City region, into the northeastern portions of Utah, but especially into the mountain regions like Vail and Aspen, all those areas. It should get some heavier snows, but especially into Wyoming, really looks to take the brunt from this system on the snow front. And then out ahead of it, we've got to be concerned about some heavier storms. So we're looking at some rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour, as some significant rains could be impacting this area. And you got the initial storms kind of blow up across this region. Those are the ones that we have to be looking out for, some larger hail and some tornadic spin ups. But look at the bow echo that comes out of this system. That's why they've got some high wind warnings and watches in place. For some of these winds could be upwards to 60, 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour. Is definitely not ruled out. And then we'll be watching this warm front really draped across this region, and then heavy rain will be traversing along that front. Then of course you still got some leftover showers still impacting a good part of the southeast, as well as we have these isolated scattered convective banding still back into Florida. And then as we get into Friday timeframes, this is about 8-9 o'clock on Friday morning. So that's this. I think the snow starts to wind down by then, as it's going to be too warm just as the snow continues to fall as it pushes across, because you're running into the more of the warm sector now, but you still got the heavy rain. So you got this, really convective banding still take place around this warm front as it continues to lift to the north. So we're talking places like central and southern portions of Minnesota here into Wisconsin, and then back into portions of the Chicago region will start getting impacted by then. And this will traverse across as well into the overnight time frame, heading into that midnight 1-2 o'clock in the morning. This is what the radar could potentially look like. Notice the rest of the country is pretty dry, because back behind it we've got some pretty dry air going to be filtering back behind that cold front, but out ahead of it we've got the heavier rains, and we could be looking at some 2 to 4 inch swaths of heavier rains across this region, especially on the northern flank of portions of, say, northern portions of Ohio, especially into portions of Michigan, as we get into your Friday time frame. So here's the winds. So yeah, they're going to be pretty significant. Yeah, you can see why they've got those high wind watches and warnings in place this morning. So if you're a truck driver out there, stay on high alert, because you cross this region, you got to keep both hands on the steering wheel, and just because this can be 60, 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts with those crosswinds. So definitely be on high alert from the Texas Panhandle to eastern portions of Colorado, into Kansas here, as well as Nebraska, especially as you get up here into the Dakotas and Iowa, and back into southern portions of Minnesota here. Definitely be on high alert. This is kind of the main bullseye, if you will, of the most significant winds right within that low pressure center as it fishtails across from west to east. And as it does, it's going to leave some heavier rains in its wake. So this is between now and the next say 48-hour time frame. And we're going to see those darker reds kind of highlighting this region. So yeah, easily 2 to 4 inch swath, essentially from the Dakotas through Minnesota, all the way through Wisconsin and back into Illinois, creeping into portions of Indiana just in the next 48 hours. And of course, further south, we still got adding to those totals what came in yesterday from that disturbance into the Gulf of Mexico. And you see where these little convective bandings take shape? Those are little isolated pockets. So some of these areas could be picking up some extremely heavy rain. Whenever these kind of train over the same areas, yes, some isolated areas can't be ruled out of 6, 8, possibly maybe even up to 10 inches across some of these isolated areas within the Florida Panhandle, going into maybe southern portions of Georgia, maybe even creeping into portions of South Carolina. So there's going to be pockets there that can't be ruled out of some 6, 8, 10 inch totals, within this region. But what's going to happen is, as the cold front will continue to drop, all the rain will subside down in the southeast, and that's going to be replaced with extremely dry air, and you get cold down in the southeast. But further north, here's the banding, as this low pressure center will be almost making a line in the sand, if you will, that we be traversing across. So places like into Boston may even get missed out on this system. But further south, you live in Pennsylvania, you live in the New York City region, you're looking at easily 1 to 2 inches of rainfall from this system back into Delaware, maybe even to DC in that time frame. And then going into Sunday, that low pressure center will be continue to traverse across and continue to move out into the Atlantic, leaving behind some just kind of leftover showers, and more dry air will intrude into the southeast and especially back into Florida. So you start to dry out. So if we detail out some of the rain amounts, across the Northeast over the next, through that Sunday time frame, we've got, 1 to possibly 2 inches, essentially from Michigan to northern portions of Ohio here, but especially into Pennsylvania and getting back into New Jersey. The New York City region could be picking up, and maybe 1.5 to 2 inches. But yeah, you swing up here to Boston, maybe hardly can buy a drop from this system. And then you finally actually start to dry out across northern portions of New England here. So that's kind of a welcome sight. You've had a lot of rain across this region. And if we head out west, yeah, we have more rain coming in from the northwest, and we kind of zoom in and get more detailed across the Pacific Northwest over the next 7 days. We're looking at maybe 2 to 3 inches of rainfall for the Vancouver region, and back into the Seattle region and Tacoma, back about 1.5 inches, even further south into the Portland region, possibly another 1.5 inches across this region. If we swing further south, possibly another inch, between now and the next 7 days into Eugene. But if we go swing all the way down into the Medford region, you notice they get lighter and lighter as we get further south, and especially as we get into north portions of California. Yeah, further south you go, the lesser amount you get, and there's not much of anything happening in San Francisco, but you'll still be wringing out some rain into the Fort Bragg's region across the Pacific Northwest along the coastal areas, over the next 7 days. But yeah, look at the temperatures as we head into early part of next week. For the southeast, this is going to be definitely the coldest temperature so far this season, as that low pressure center, that cold front, brings all that dry air, and then you sink like a rock. And these areas across the southeast will be widespread 40s, and especially actually getting into the Florida Panhandle. If we zoom into some of these temperatures, oh gosh, it's going to feel a lot like fall, folks. I mean, the fall foliage is in full effect up here in New England. It's just going to get better, and then it's going to be feeling a lot more like fall, because widespread 40s and 30s inundate the East Coast all the way down to the deep south, right? You got Louisiana checking into the upper 40s for Tuesday morning. You've got Mississippi and Alabama all the way to the coastal communities, folks. You got the Florida Panhandle and the upper 40s. I mean, even the 50s drop as far south as possibly Miami could be looking at maybe upper 50s by the time we get into that Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. So definitely some chillier air on the way. But even out west, I mean, everybody gets this cold front. I mean, at least you get a little bit of a cool shot, especially around the mountain regions. But look back into Texas, you got upper 40s across a good part of north and central Texas, and you got Oklahoma in the 40s, and of course in the 30s if you swing further north into portions of Kansas and Nebraska. So everybody gets into this cold front. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely check out my winter forecast after this update, and thanks for watching, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.